Seattle's rain always arrived as a gray curtain, and on this particular morning, it felt like the city itself was sighing. Rachel Carter, eyes gritty from too little sleep, hustled her twins, Max and Maya, out of their worn apartment and into the misty blur of Pike Place. The clock on the stove had blinked 7:03 when she'd spilled her first coffee, and by 7:20 she was already late, keys clutched in one hand, umbrella in the other, navigating the slippery sidewalk while her kids trailed behind in mismatched rain boots. Max, head down, held his science folder to his chest, as if it might float him across the puddles. Maya bounced and spun, her blue raincoat flaring behind her. Rachel couldn't help but smile, even through the ache in her jaw. Her daughter's energy was a stubborn kind of hope. Inside Rachel's coat pocket, her fingers closed around an old, battered keychain, a heavy copper oval with the faded logo of her alma mater pressed into one side. It wasn't much to look at, but the keychain had been with her through everything. Late-night lab exams, the first doctor's appointment when she'd learned about her rare gene, the day she'd carried her newborn twins home alone. Sometimes, when anxiety squeezed her chest, she squeezed the keychain right back. That morning, as the three of them ducked under an awning by the bus stop, Rachel fished out her phone. Her thumb flew over the screen, firing off a text to Dr. Montrose, her former mentor, the one person she trusted for advice. "I can't do this alone. Do you know anyone who can help with emergency childcare? Please." She hesitated, blinking away rainwater and exhaustion. She hit send. The message vanished. Rachel let out a sigh and slipped her phone away, missing the tiny ping, message sent to unknown contact. A moment later, the bus roared up, brakes hissing. Rachel bundled the twins on board, fumbling with damp fare cards. Maya leaned against her side, shivering, and Max whispered, "Do you have to work again tonight?" Rachel hesitated. "Yeah, buddy, just for a little while. We'll do pancakes this weekend, okay?" Outside the fogged-up window, the city skidded by in a series of watery reflections. Rachel pressed her forehead to the glass, her mind spinning with numbers and deadlines. She was already behind on her freelance data project for Cascade Cleantech, and the twins' school called last week about late tuition. A single missed invoice and everything unraveled. At the next stop, she hugged the twins close, handing them off to the cheerful after-school coordinator, Mrs. Davidson. Maya shot her a fierce little smile. "You got your lucky keychain?" Rachel laughed. "Always." She waggled the copper oval, and for a second, Maya's eyes lit up. As the rain beat harder, Rachel ducked beneath a shop awning to take a breath. She pulled out the keychain and rolled it between her palms, the metal cold and reassuring. How did I get here, she wondered, watching a young couple huddle together across the street, sharing a giant umbrella. How did my life end up like this, alone with two kids in this storm? Her phone buzzed. Not Dr. Montrose's name, just a string of numbers, an unknown Seattle area code. The message: "You texted the right person." Rachel's heart leapt, but she couldn't tell if it was relief or something colder, sharper. She glanced down at her old keychain, its surface gleaming in the morning gloom, and felt a shiver crawl up her spine. That day moved in fits and starts. Rachel slogged through her data set at the co-op workspace. Nerves jangled from the mysterious text. She checked her phone every few minutes. When Maya's school called, fever, maybe strep throat. Rachel rushed to pick her up, apologizing to her project manager by text. At the pharmacy, she hugged Maya, who dozed against her shoulder, the copper keychain peeking out from the little girl's backpack. Max hummed quietly beside them, tapping out code on an imaginary keyboard. Later, as Rachel microwaved soup in their cramped kitchen, the twins sprawled on the rug. Max recited planets in order. Maya, still flushed, pulled the keychain from her bag and held it to the light. "If I have this, does it mean I'm strong like you, Mom?" Rachel's eyes stung. "You're stronger." That night, after the twins were finally asleep, Rachel stared at her phone, thumb hovering over the reply. "Who is this?" She almost typed, but she hesitated. Instead, she set her phone down, letting the question hover in the darkness, just as the keychain glinted quietly on Maya's bedside table, a silent witness to another rainy Seattle night. And somewhere, someone unknown was reading her plea for help. About to change everything, Seattle's rain never really stopped. It just softened and hardened, as if the sky itself was thinking, sometimes loud, sometimes whispering, always a backdrop to Rachel Carter's life. That night, as the twins finally drifted off to sleep and the city's sirens faded into background hum, Rachel sat by the window with the old keychain resting in her palm, heavy with memory. She drifted, back to a different storm, this one swirling inside her. Back then, she was just Rachel Lee, 24, half mad with ambition and coffee, holding down 2 lab jobs and squeezing every hour she could out of her day. Her roommate had laughed at her tendency to write everything in code on Post-it notes, but Rachel needed systems to feel safe. The genetic test had arrived in a plain envelope, the kind that looked like junk mail. She remembered opening it under fluorescent lights, the room cold and silent, her hands trembling so much she had to put down her tea. The words blinked up at her: carrier of a rare gene, elevated risk of early infertility, and the world seemed to tilt. It was the kind of moment that scrapes something raw inside you, changing your plans whether you wanted them to or not. She'd paced the quad that night, the old copper keychain, already worn from years of nervous fidgeting, pressed so tightly in her fist that the imprint lasted for hours. The idea of family had always seemed so far off, an abstract goal for some distant, grown-up version of herself. Now she had to decide. Not later. Not someday. Now. Rachel had always been logical, but the logic here was brutal. If she wanted children, she couldn't wait. But there was no partner in sight. Not really. Ben, her boyfriend at the time, was a philosophy grad who spent more time talking about ethics than living them. When she told him the news, he went silent, then said, "Maybe we should just see what happens." She saw the flicker of panic in his eyes and felt her own resolve harden. "I'm not leaving it up to chance," she said. Within a week, Ben stopped sleeping over. 2 weeks later, he ghosted her completely, slipping out of her life with a half-hearted text. Rachel didn't have time for regret. She started researching clinics, grants, gene counseling. She called Dr. Montrose, her old research supervisor, and together they went over profiles, searching for a donor who felt right. Not just numbers and statistics, but something warmer. That's how she found the profile. A graduate student with a love for molecular biology, hand-drawn doodles in the margins, and a note that simply said, "I want to help a future scientist." That line stuck with her. Rachel never told anyone else, but when she picked up her university keychain at the campus bookstore that day, it felt like a tiny act of hope, an anchor. It was the only thing she kept on her bedside through the whole IVF journey. Ultrasounds, hormone shots, the anxious wait for results. Through it all, the keychain never left her side. Her marriage came later, almost by accident. After the twins were born, she met Alex, another environmental scientist, quiet and earnest. They married for all the right reasons: mutual respect, a shared sense of duty. But there was no fire, no spark. In the end, they both agreed, amicably, with relief, that their friendship was stronger without the strain of pretending to be a love story. He moved across the country, still sending the twins postcards from every research station. The only thing that stayed, through every move and every change, was the keychain. When she'd moved to Seattle, clutching 2 infants and a battered suitcase, it was the first thing she unpacked. It was more than a talisman. It was proof she'd made her own choices, even when they scared her to death. Now, in her small apartment, Rachel's gaze drifted to the twins' bedroom. Maya was sprawled, limbs everywhere, with the keychain hooked onto her backpack. Max was curled in a tight ball, as if trying to hide from the world. She thought of all the nights she'd held them, one in each arm, whispering that everything would be okay even when she didn't believe it herself. Her phone buzzed, dragging her back to the present. Another text from the stranger. "You ever wonder what you'd do differently if you had the chance?" Rachel hesitated, then typed, "Everyone does, but I wouldn't change my kids for the world." No reply. She set the phone down, letting her fingers drift over the old copper keychain, tracing the dents and scratches. It was a simple thing, but it had weathered everything with her. Every bad decision, every brave one. Rain tapped the window, and for a moment, Rachel allowed herself to remember the girl she'd been. Not perfect, not fearless, but relentless. She thought of that first appointment at the fertility clinic. The sterile smell, the nervous laughter, the sound of the nurse's shoes on the tile. The way the donor profile had made her smile, made her believe, just for a second, that kindness and science could shape a future. And here she was, still making choices, still clutching her talisman, still moving forward. She switched off the light and joined the twins in their tiny room, lying on the edge of Maya's bed. She watched the city lights blink through the curtains and listened to the twins' slow, even breaths. For all the chaos and fear, she wouldn't trade this for anything, not even the quiet life she sometimes imagined. As she drifted to sleep, Rachel felt the keychain under her pillow, cool and steady. She whispered a silent promise, to herself, to her kids, to the girl she'd been. Tomorrow would bring new storms, but tonight she had her anchors, and she had a story that was still hers to write. Mornings in Seattle weren't gentle. By 6:15 a.m., the sky was barely lit, and Rachel Carter was already awake, sitting cross-legged at the kitchen table with her laptop open and her head in her hands. A spreadsheet full of raw data blinked at her. The heating had cut out again last night, so she worked in her old wool cardigan, breath fogging the window above the sink. She kept the copper keychain next to her coffee, thumb pressing into the engraved logo whenever her mind drifted toward panic. In the bedroom, the twins were coughing. Max's voice was thin as he called for water. Rachel slipped quietly down the hall, poured him a glass, and brushed his damp curls away from his forehead. Maya coughed too, then whimpered, "My throat hurts, Mommy." "I know, honey." Rachel kissed the tops of their heads and tucked them back under the faded comforter. "You both have to stay home today." She texted Mrs. Davidson at the school, both twins sick. "We'll try to send work if they feel better." Then messaged her project lead. "Running late, twins have fever. We'll send updated graphs by noon." No answer. She didn't blame them. In freelancing, there was always someone faster, cheaper, less distracted by real life. After breakfast, instant oatmeal again. Rachel set up a little camp on the living room rug. Blankets, tissues, cartoons on low volume, a bottle of pediatric cough syrup within arm's reach. She balanced her laptop on her knees and started her code. The twins curled on either side of her, Maya's head heavy against her shoulder. The old keychain, clipped now to Maya's backpack from yesterday, caught the morning light. It swung gently whenever Maya coughed or rolled over. At one point, Maya picked it up and traced the scratches with her small finger. "Does this mean I'm strong like you, Mom?" Rachel looked over, her throat tightening. "You're even stronger. You and Max are my heroes." Max, still feverish, managed a crooked smile. "What does it open?" Rachel hesitated, then grinned. "Doors to good luck, and to all the places you want to go." She tried to focus on her work. Graphs and projections, green numbers flickering on the screen, but her attention kept drifting to her children. She felt the weight of every choice she'd made. To bring them into the world on her own, to move to this damp city, to take any job that allowed her to be home when they needed her most. She'd chosen this life. But some days, the responsibility pressed so hard, she felt she might snap. Noon came and went. Rachel handed the twins their medicine, ran her code, emailed her graphs. She scrolled through job boards while stirring soup. At 3 p.m., she bundled the twins in blankets and carried them, one by one, to the small balcony to watch the rain for a few minutes. A tiny taste of fresh air. At 4, a delivery arrived. Groceries from the community center, left by a volunteer. Rachel waved a silent thank you from behind the glass and wiped away tears she didn't want the twins to see. By evening, exhaustion set in. Rachel spooned out soup, humming a lullaby, pretending not to worry about the rent notice in her inbox. She did what she always did, pushed her fear aside and made up a story for the twins about space explorers who found a planet where it rained candy. Maya clutched the keychain as Rachel tucked her in. "Will you keep it safe while I sleep?" the girl whispered. "I promise," Rachel said. Just then, her phone buzzed, vibrating against the chipped kitchen counter. She glanced at the screen, expecting a message from Mrs. Davidson or another late bill reminder. Instead, a new number flashed, the same one from yesterday. The message, "You texted the right person." Rachel's heart skipped. She opened the message, hands shaking. "I'm sorry, who is this? I think I texted you by mistake yesterday," she replied, trying to sound calm. No answer for a long moment. She set her phone down and sat on the edge of the couch, watching the old keychain swing from Maya's backpack. Max, half asleep, muttered, "Mom, who's that?" Rachel brushed his hair. "Just someone I don't know yet." Suddenly, her phone buzzed again. "You needed help, maybe I can." Rachel's breath caught. She glanced at Maya, the child's face peaceful at last. The keychain glimmered with a stray ray of sunset, dangling like a charm against the gray day. For the rest of the evening, Rachel couldn't shake the strange chill that threaded through her anxiety and her hope. She sat by the twins until they drifted off, then curled up on the couch, laptop open but eyes unfocused. Outside, Seattle's rain kept falling, drumming the old rhythm against the window. Inside, Rachel clung to her routine. The coding, the soup, the quiet lullabies, the keychain always close. But the world felt just a little different, as if a new door might be opening, one she hadn't even known to look for. Before sleep, she texted Dr. Montrose, needing to ground herself. "Do you ever wonder if luck is just persistence in disguise?" She smiled at her own question. The old keychain was proof. Things didn't always get easier, but they always, somehow, moved forward. As Rachel finally let herself drift into sleep, her daughter's backpack was the last thing she saw. The battered copper keychain swinging gently, a quiet promise in the fading light. The next day broke with a strange hush. For once, Seattle's rain had softened to a mist. Rachel let herself wake slowly, blinking at the slant of gray light, then remembered the twins were still sick, the bills were still due, and that strange text conversation hadn't resolved. She checked her phone. Nothing. A vague disappointment drifted through her. Hope was such a fragile, embarrassing thing. Rachel brewed coffee, her hands steadying as the bitter scent filled the kitchen. She checked the twins. Maya's fever had dropped a bit. Max was sitting up, building towers with cough drop wrappers. Their resilience always amazed her, and today it was all that kept her moving. She juggled a morning Zoom with her project manager, then ran a quick load of laundry, making sure Maya's backpack, with the old copper keychain, was within arm's reach on the couch. By noon, Rachel was trying to finish a summary of river contamination data, squinting at her screen, when the apartment buzzer crackled. Her first thought was the landlord, or maybe the food pantry delivery. She wiped her hands and pressed the button, her voice wary. "Hello?" A smooth, unfamiliar voice answered. "Miss Carter? My name is Elijah Foster. I'm here on behalf of Graham Sinclair. May I come up?" Rachel stiffened, heart pounding. "Who?" "Elijah Foster," he repeated. "Graham Sinclair sent me. He's asked to speak with you about your children." The twins peeked around the corner, eyes wide. Rachel moved fast, snatched her phone, checked the door chain, and double-checked the hallway before opening. A tall man stood there in a tailored coat, eyes gentle but businesslike. Beside him, parked by the curb, was a gleaming black SUV, a jarring sight against the faded brick of her building. Elijah offered a polite smile. "I understand this is abrupt. Mr. Sinclair would like to invite you and your children to his home. He believes he may be able to help, with Maya and Max's health specifically." Rachel gripped the keychain in her pocket, fighting a surge of anxiety. "Why us? What does he know about my kids?" Elijah's tone softened. "I can't discuss details here, but Graham Sinclair is uniquely equipped to help, and he's requested you come today. Everything's been arranged." For a long moment, Rachel stared at him, every instinct screaming to say no. But she remembered Maya's flushed cheeks, the medical bills, the mysterious texts, the sense of being pushed toward something that, at least this once, might be bigger than her fears. She looked down at Maya, who was clutching the old keychain tight. "Should we trust him, honey?" Maya nodded, solemn as an old woman. "Don't forget the lucky keychain, Mommy." Rachel took a steadying breath. "Give us 10 minutes. She dressed the twins in clean clothes, packed medicine and snacks, then paused. What could you possibly bring to a billionaire's house that would matter? She almost left the keychain behind, but Maya insisted, snapping it onto her backpack. "Just in case we need extra luck," the girl whispered. As they stepped into the elevator, Rachel's mind spun with possibilities and warnings. Elijah waited downstairs, ever patient, and opened the SUV door with practiced formality. The leather seats felt wrong beneath Rachel's thrift store jeans. Max stared wide-eyed at the touchscreen console, while Maya clutched the keychain like a talisman. The drive was quiet. Rachel answered Elijah's small talk with careful, measured words. The city slipped past, then turned into green, sprawling suburbs, and finally a winding drive lined with rhododendrons and copper beaches. They pulled up to a mansion that looked as if it had grown out of the wet earth. Stone, glass, sharp lines softened by rain. Rachel led the twins up the walk, her nerves sparking. As the door opened, the warm scent of cedar and something faintly herbal met them. Inside, a woman with kind eyes introduced herself as Sophie Chen, the goddaughter of Graham Sinclair, and ushered them in with a warmth that felt almost out of place in such grand surroundings. Rachel barely had time to take in the art on the walls or the echo of their footsteps when Elijah reappeared. "Mr. Sinclair will see you now." In a study that seemed lifted from another era, books, plants, and the quiet tick of a grandfather clock, Graham Sinclair sat behind a desk, silver hair swept back, a presence at once imposing and oddly vulnerable. Rachel sized him up immediately. A man who'd made more decisions than mistakes, and who probably expected the world to bend. But his first words surprised her. "Thank you for coming on such short notice. I know you have every reason to be cautious. I hope to earn your trust." Rachel didn't answer, just squeezed the keychain in her pocket and kept her chin up. Graham's gaze softened as he looked at the twins, especially when Maya peeked out from behind Rachel's coat. He asked gentle, well-informed questions about the twins' health, Rachel's work, even about the old keychain swinging from Maya's bag. Rachel's guard never dropped, not completely. But as the afternoon wore on, a strange thing happened. Max and Maya wandered off with Sophie, laughter echoing from the sunroom. Graham explained that he'd heard about Rachel's case through a network of rare disease researchers, and that he believed his own medical resources might help. Still, Rachel hesitated. "I'm not sure why you care." Graham's reply was careful. "Sometimes, the past gives us a second chance. You'll understand more soon." As the day faded, Sophie appeared in the doorway. "It's getting late. Should I make dinner for everyone?" Maya tugged on Rachel's sleeve. "Can we stay, Mom? Just tonight? Please?" Rachel looked at her daughter, then at the copper keychain, swinging gently in Maya's hand, catching a sudden shaft of late sun. She nodded, heart full of questions but unable to say no. They were stepping into the unknown, keychain and all. Dinner at the Sinclair estate felt like stepping onto a different planet. Rachel kept close to the twins as Sophie led them through vast hallways, the walls lined with moody Pacific Northwest landscapes and old family photographs. The kitchen itself could have fit her entire apartment twice over, and the smell of baking bread and rosemary chicken made Max's stomach grumble audibly. Sophie just laughed, guiding the children to a long oak table. Rachel watched the way Sophie moved, easy, natural, quietly confident. In another life, Rachel thought, maybe she'd have learned to move through big spaces like this without feeling so exposed. She caught her own reflection in a window, a woman with rumpled hair and tired eyes, kids in tow, standing in the middle of someone else's story. She reached instinctively for the old keychain, feeling its familiar weight settle her nerves. The twins took to Sophie instantly. She showed them a secret cabinet full of science kits, and within minutes, Max and Maya were making lava lamps with oil and colored water. Their laughter ricocheted off the stone floors, bouncing through the high ceilings until the mansion felt, for the first time, a little less intimidating. While the kids played, Graham Sinclair invited Rachel to join him in his office. She hesitated. Something about the whole situation still prickled at her. But Sophie's reassuring smile tipped the scale. "I'll keep an eye on them," Sophie promised. Inside the study, Graham's desk was meticulously organized. Framed accolades and weathered books spoke of decades in academia and industry. What caught Rachel's eye, though, was something much smaller, a keychain gleaming beside a stack of medical journals. She recognized the logo instantly. The same fertility clinic where she'd chosen her donor. The coincidence hit her like a splash of cold water. Graham followed her gaze and offered a small, sad smile. "It's funny how we keep the strangest things, isn't it?" Rachel tried to keep her voice neutral. "Some things just remind you who you are." Graham nodded. "Or who you could have been." She wanted to press him for answers, but something in his posture, shoulders tense, fingers fidgeting with a silver pen, warned her away. Instead, she answered his questions about the twins' health, sharing the medical history she could remember. Graham's knowledge of rare immune conditions was oddly specific. He made notes as she spoke, sometimes asking questions so pointed that Rachel wondered just how much he already knew. Suddenly, Sophie popped her head in. "Max is asking for you, Rachel. Maya's showing off her lucky keychain again. She says it brings good science ideas." Rachel excused herself, escaping to the sunroom. Maya was indeed holding court, swinging the copper keychain from her finger as Max explained molecules to Sophie. Maya looked up, her face glowing. "I gave Graham your keychain, Mom. He seemed lonely." Rachel's stomach dropped. "You what?" Maya shrugged. "He looked like he needed it." Before Rachel could protest, Graham himself appeared, the copper keychain in his palm. He turned it over slowly, eyes distant. "She's right. Sometimes a little luck goes a long way." Something shifted in Rachel then, a flicker of empathy even as her suspicion sharpened. For years, the keychain had been her anchor, her reminder that every decision she'd made for her children. Seeing it in Graham's hand felt wrong, but also, strangely, like a passing of some invisible baton. The rest of the evening blurred into a collage of small, intimate moments. Sophie led a science scavenger hunt in the greenhouse. Max found a rare orchid, Maya a frog with gold-flecked eyes. Rachel watched her children, their faces open and unguarded, and felt the ache of hope in her chest. Later, after the twins were in bed, Sophie had set up a cozy guest room with a stack of storybooks. Rachel wandered the halls, restless. In Graham's study, she found him still at his desk, the copper keychain beside him. He glanced up, his face half in shadow. "I owe you some explanations," he said quietly. Rachel leaned against the doorway. "Start with why you have a keychain from that clinic." Graham's eyes flicked to the memento. "Sometimes the past doesn't stay put. Sometimes it follows you." Rachel held his gaze, unwilling to back down. "What does any of this have to do with my kids?" He didn't answer, just ran his thumb over the keychain's battered surface. The silence stretched between them, heavy and unresolved. Rachel left him there, feeling as if she'd stepped into a hall of mirrors, every reflection showing a slightly different version of herself, her choices, her children's future. That night, as Maya slept with the science kits piled at the foot of her bed and Max curled around a stuffed frog, Rachel sat by the window, the mansion silent around her. She missed the weight of the old keychain in her palm, but she realized, maybe for the first time, that she didn't need it to remember how far she'd come. Down the hall, Graham turned the keychain over and over in his hands, lost in thought, the past catching up in the soft, uncertain dark. By morning, Rachel was up before dawn. The mansion felt like a museum after hours, silent, every shadow stretched long in the pale blue light. She padded softly to the kitchen, her mind already buzzing with questions she was too tired to answer. The smell of coffee brewing was a small mercy. Sophie was already at the table, hair pulled back, scribbling in a notebook. "Couldn't sleep either?" Sophie asked, glancing up. Rachel shook her head, smiling wryly. "I kept dreaming about doors and keys and, well, all sorts of things I can't control." Sophie's look turned warm. "Maybe that's just your mind getting ready for something new." Before Rachel could answer, the twins appeared. Max in his dinosaur pajamas, Maya trailing behind, clutching a science kit and the frog from last night. The mansion's unfamiliar comfort made the children quieter, watchful. Rachel ruffled their hair and promised pancakes, then checked her phone. Still nothing from the mysterious number, but there were 3 missed calls from an unknown contact and a text from Dr. Montrose. "Heard about Sinclair. Call me if you need backup. Trust your instincts, Rach." Rachel slipped her phone away, unease flickering in her chest. After breakfast, Elijah arrived with a sealed manila envelope. "Mr. Sinclair would like you to meet him in the library." Sophie scooped up the kids for a scavenger hunt in the garden, promising they'd be back for stories. Rachel followed Elijah down a hall lined with glass cases, strange artifacts, old maps, and dozens of framed news clippings. She caught herself studying every surface, searching for some clue about why they were really here. Inside the library, Graham Sinclair sat surrounded by sunlight and medical files. On the desk were vials, test results, and, centered among them, Rachel's copper keychain. He gestured for her to sit. Rachel crossed her arms, defensive. "So what's this really about?" Graham met her gaze, the lines at his mouth softening. "I had my team run some advanced blood work on Max and Maya. I hope you'll forgive me. There's a rare immune marker, one I share. It's almost never seen outside our specific genetic line." Rachel's stomach clenched. "You ran tests on my children without telling me?" "I was desperate," Graham said. "I've spent years looking for any sign that my genetics did something good in the world. Years ago, before my health declined, I donated sperm at the same clinic where you went. I thought I could help someone, maybe make a difference." The room felt like it was shrinking around Rachel. "Are you saying you're there?" "I don't know for sure," Graham said, voice low. "But the immune marker, it's too rare to be a coincidence. I promise I never set out to intrude. When my own health started failing, I wanted to know if any children out there shared my genes. And when your text came, it felt like fate." Rachel didn't know whether to scream or run. She gripped the arms of her chair, her pulse pounding in her ears. The keychain glinted between them on the desk, a bridge neither one of them knew how to cross. Suddenly, Elijah rushed in, phone in hand, face pale. "You need to see this," he said, voice tight. He turned the screen toward them. A gossip site headline blared, "Secret heirs, Sinclair twins rumored in medical mystery." There was a grainy photo of Rachel and the twins at the clinic, her copper keychain bright in the sunlight, Maya holding her hand. Rachel's body went cold. She felt the old panic clawing at her throat. "How? Who leaked this?" Graham shook his head. "Someone must have tipped off the press. I'm sorry, Rachel. I'll do everything I can to protect your family." The phone buzzed again. Messages piling up from unknown numbers, media requests, even a few threats. Sophie burst in with the twins, eyes blazing. "We need to get you somewhere safe. I can handle the press, but you should lay low for a few days." Rachel tried to keep calm for her kids. Max clung to her hand. Maya hugged Sophie. The story was everywhere now, spiraling out of control. The only thing keeping Rachel upright was sheer stubbornness and the way Sophie calmly took charge, fielding calls, arranging privacy screens, and coaching Rachel through what to say and not say. That afternoon, Sophie sat beside Rachel on the back porch, their faces flushed with exhaustion. "I was adopted," Sophie said quietly. "Found out when I was 13. I know what it's like when your whole story gets thrown in the air. But you can shape what happens next, Rachel. You're not alone." Rachel nodded, tears threatening. "Thank you. I'm not used to having help." The copper keychain had made its way back to Maya's hands. Sophie reached over, squeezed Rachel's shoulder. "That little thing has survived a lot. Just like you." Inside, Graham called his legal team, preparing to shut down the tabloids. Elijah changed all the passwords and checked security. Rachel watched her children playing on the soft rug, Maya absently spinning the keychain, and felt something inside her harden. Resolve, defiance, a will to fight for her family, no matter what storm came next. In the glare of unwanted attention, the copper keychain had become more than a lucky charm. It was a banner, proof of survival, of the choices that built this family, of everything Rachel refused to let go. Nights stretched long and restless in the mansion after the tabloid story broke. For once, Rachel couldn't escape into the routine of caring for the twins. Everywhere she turned, the world seemed to be closing in. News trucks idled at the end of the driveway. Anonymous messages poured in, some cruel, some curious, a few full of desperate hope from other families seeking answers. Sophie did her best to run interference, but the stress crackled through the house like static. Rachel found herself wandering the halls, too wired to sleep, the copper keychain heavy in her palm again. It was well past midnight when she found Graham on the back terrace, looking out at the rain-soaked gardens. He held the keychain, rolling it between his fingers, lost in thought. She joined him in silence, arms folded against the cold. The city lights flickered in the distance, distorted through the drizzle. "You look like someone who's waiting for a verdict," Rachel finally said. Graham's voice was low, careful. "I'm waiting for forgiveness, but I know I haven't earned it." Rachel's jaw tightened. "I'm not even sure what to be angry about. That you ran tests on my kids without asking, or that you might be their donor?" He nodded, shame written clear across his face. "I crossed a line. All I can say is I wanted to know if anything good came from my choices. I never meant to take anything from you. Or from them." She studied his hands, rougher than she'd expected, nails bitten. "You helped save them. I can't ignore that. But you don't get to just step into our lives and claim a place. Not after all the work I've done to build something safe for them." Graham nodded, words sticking. "If there's any way I can make up for it, any way to be a part of their lives that you decide, I'll do it. But I'll respect your boundaries. That's a promise." For a moment, neither spoke. The only sound was the rain ticking on the patio and the distant hum of the city. Rachel turned the keychain over in her hand, the familiar ridges grounding her. "I spent years telling myself I could do this all alone. But maybe that's not fair to them or to me." Graham's voice trembled. "When I was first diagnosed, I cut everyone out. I thought I had to be strong for myself, that needing anyone was weakness. But it's just loneliness wearing a mask." Rachel's anger softened, just a shade. "We're all learning as we go, aren't we?" He almost smiled. "Every day." Inside, the house was quiet. Rachel padded to the kitchen, where she found Sophie in the dim light making tea. Sophie gestured for her to sit, and poured her a cup, honey and ginger floating in the steam. Sophie spoke first. "You don't have to decide everything right now, you know. Not about Graham, not about the future." Rachel stared into her tea. "What if I get it wrong?" Sophie shrugged. "What if you get it right? I used to think adoption was a curse, like I'd always be missing something. But now I see it's also a choice. You get to build your own meaning, your own story." Rachel's eyes misted. "I've spent so long fighting, I forgot how to let anyone help me." Sophie slid the copper keychain across the table between them. "We all need an anchor. But sometimes you have to let someone else hold it for a while." They sat together in the kitchen, two women linked not by blood, but by battle scars and hard-won empathy. The keychain lay on the table between them, a bridge between Rachel's past and the messy, hopeful future Sophie promised could exist. The next morning dawned damp and gray, but the mood in the mansion had shifted. Max and Maya raced through the halls, shrieking with laughter as Sophie chased them, playfully waving a spatula. Rachel watched, a lump in her throat. She wasn't sure how she'd reached this strange, unexpected place, but for the first time, she wasn't desperate to run away. Later that afternoon, when a lawyer from the clinic called, Rachel took the call with Graham at her side. Together, they listened as the clinic confirmed the genetic link. Graham was the biological donor, but all parental rights and decisions belonged solely to Rachel. It was official. Messy, but official. Rachel hung up and turned to Graham, uncertainty twisting in her chest. "So, what do we do now?" He smiled, shy, unsteady, but real. "Whatever you're willing to let me do." Rachel considered the question. For years, her story had been all about survival. Now, for the first time, maybe it could be about something more. That night, after the twins had fallen asleep, Rachel sat by the window with Sophie and Graham. They sipped tea, the copper keychain resting on the table, and talked about what came next. School projects, doctor's appointments, maybe even a science fair. Rachel realized she didn't have to know all the answers. She just had to keep going, one step at a time, and let her family, chosen, unexpected, beautifully imperfect, find its way. The storm outside eased, leaving the world quiet and new. Graham's hospitalization happened so suddenly, it left the whole house off balance. One moment, he was smiling at the twins over breakfast, joking about the green dye in Max's hair from their science experiments. The next, he was doubled over in pain, pale and shaking. Rachel called the ambulance, her hands moving by instinct, her voice sharp and steady even as her mind spun in 1,000 directions. The ride to the hospital blurred, a siren wailing, Sophie's arm tight around the twins in the back seat. Max staring out the window in silent terror, Maya clutching the copper keychain so hard her knuckles went white. Rachel stayed glued to Graham's side, answering questions for the EMTs, willing him to keep his eyes open. But even Rachel's stubborn will couldn't control what came next. Doctors swept Graham into emergency care, and Rachel found herself in a waiting room, hands trembling, the hospital's antiseptic brightness pressing in. Sophie handled the paperwork, calm and efficient. The twins clung to Rachel, suddenly small again, their energy spent. The next hours stretched thin as wire. Rachel sat with Max and Maya in her lap, her phone vibrating with messages she didn't answer, her mind full of all the ways things could go wrong. A part of her wanted to scream, but she just kept stroking Maya's hair. Her other hand clamped on the old copper keychain for luck. It was Max who broke the silence. "Is he gonna be okay, Mom?" Rachel looked into his wide, anxious eyes and told the truth, because that's all she'd ever promised her children. I don't know, buddy, but the doctors are doing everything they can. Maya slid the keychain into Rachel's palm, her voice small. You should hold it. It works better for you. Rachel almost laughed, blinking back tears. Maybe it works best when we all share it. They stayed at the hospital through the night. Sophie brought sandwiches and puzzles from the gift shop, never once asking if Rachel needed help, just quietly being there, sitting shoulder to shoulder on the plastic waiting room chairs. When Rachel finally let herself cry, it was with Sophie's hand warm in hers. In the early morning, Graham's doctor came out, his face tired but kind. He's stable. We'll need to keep him a few days, but he's asking for you. Rachel sent Sophie home with the kids first. She found Graham propped up in a sunlit room, an IV in his arm and an awkward smile on his face. You scared us, Rachel said quietly. I scared myself, Graham admitted, voice rough. I keep thinking if I just push a little harder, the past won't catch up. She shook her head, pulling a chair close. You don't have to do everything alone, you know. He studied her for a long moment. I never knew how to ask for help or accept it. Rachel nodded. I didn't either. I still don't most days. They sat together, the words slow and careful, like two people learning a new language. Graham apologized again for his mistakes, his voice thick with regret. Rachel found herself forgiving him, not all at once, but in pieces, the way a broken bone learns to bear weight again. When she got home, she found the twins napping, Maya with the keychain tucked under her pillow. Rachel sat on the edge of the bed and just watched them breathe, the peace in their faces a balm to her frayed nerves. Sophie found her there, an hour later, with tea and a tentative smile. You're strong, Rachel, but you don't have to carry it all by yourself. Let someone else be strong for you, too. Rachel let the words wash over her, sinking in deeper than she expected. Maybe it was time to let go of the myth of the lone warrior, to allow herself the grace of leaning on someone, even if just for a moment. That week passed quietly. The tabloids moved on to newer scandals, the neighbors lost interest, and the house became a refuge again. Rachel and Sophie cooked simple meals, filling the kitchen with laughter and stories about their own mothers. The twins drew get-well cards for Graham, covering the paper in rockets, frogs, and hearts. Rachel started dreaming again, not about disaster, but about possibility. She sketched out ideas for a research project she'd shelved years ago, the kind of work she once believed was out of reach. She found herself talking to Sophie late into the night, swapping secrets and confessions, forging a friendship rooted in hard-won trust. Every night, Maya insisted on sleeping with the old keychain under her pillow. Just in case, she said, eyes bright with hope. Rachel tucked the covers tight, pressing a kiss to Maya's hair. It's not just luck. It's all of us together. That's what makes us strong. Outside, the rain softened, washing the city clean. Inside, Rachel felt something she hadn't in a long time. A quiet, steady hope, as if the keychain's magic was simply the strength they'd all found in each other. For once, survival didn't feel like a battle. It felt like a promise. The day Graham returned home, the air inside the Sinclair estate felt different. Lighter, less burdened, like a room that had finally been aired out after a long, silent winter. Rachel stood by the door as Elijah wheeled Graham in, the twins running ahead with shouts and homemade welcome home banners. Sophie brought in a stack of medical papers and a casserole. For a moment, everyone hovered, uncertain how to restart a life that had paused and shifted. Rachel met Graham's gaze as he settled in. She saw the lingering frailty in his face, the tentative hope, and something else. Gratitude, maybe, or just the quiet courage to try again. For a second, she was surprised by how much she cared. She hadn't chosen any of this, but maybe she could choose what happened next. Later that evening, Rachel sat at the kitchen table, a mug of cooling tea cradled in her hands, pen poised above a blank page. The old copper keychain sat beside her, its surface dulled by years of touch, but gleaming in the lamplight. She took a breath and began to write. Not for anyone else, but for herself. The letter started with apologies she'd never said out loud. For every time she'd doubted herself, for every moment she'd tried to carry it all alone. And then, as her pen moved, she forgave herself. For being afraid, for being angry, for not always having the answers. The next morning, she gave Graham the letter. He read it in silence, tears bright in his eyes, then folded it carefully and tucked it into his pocket. "Thank you for trusting me," he said, his voice soft. "I want to earn my place in your lives. On your terms." Rachel nodded, emotion thick in her chest. It's time for all of us to start again. As spring pressed in, bringing bursts of cherry blossoms and the first truly sunny days, Rachel found herself growing too. She and Sophie threw themselves into organizing a science fair at the local community center, an idea sparked by Max and Maya's endless curiosity. They wanted every kid in the neighborhood to feel the spark of discovery. The planning was messy, full of budget arguments and last-minute glue gun disasters, but Rachel felt alive in a way she hadn't in years. Graham joined the committee, using his connections to secure donations and volunteers. Sometimes, Rachel caught him watching the twins, with a look that was half awe, half regret. But the kids welcomed him easily, especially Maya, who insisted on reading him every fact about frogs and planets she could find. Max peppered him with questions about engineering, delighted by every story Graham told about failed inventions and stubborn successes. Sophie, meanwhile, became Rachel's confidant in every way that mattered. Late at night, they'd sit by the window, sharing childhood secrets and recipes, laughing about all the ways life had failed to stick to the script. One rainy evening, as they sorted stacks of construction paper for the fair, Sophie admitted, "I used to wish my life made more sense, but maybe the best stories are the messy ones." Rachel smiled, looking down at the old keychain in her hand. "I wouldn't trade mine for anything. Not anymore." When the day of the science fair arrived, the whole neighborhood showed up. Kids in mismatched costumes, parents with phones out, a sense of community thick in the air. Rachel moved through the crowd with Sophie at her side, making sure every volcano erupted and every solar system spun. Graham wore a badge that said, "Science Grandpa," and the twins wore matching shirts that read, "Experiment in Progress." Maya clipped the copper keychain to her backpack, insisting it was the luckiest charm in the room. As the sun set and the last tables were folded away, Rachel lingered by the doors of the community center, heart full. She watched her children run through the parking lot, Sophie laughing with them, Graham leaning on his cane but beaming with pride. For the first time, Rachel didn't feel like a visitor in her own life. She belonged here, in this chosen, complicated, resilient family. The next morning, Rachel got up early and dressed in her favorite shirt, the one she'd saved for someday. She took the old copper keychain from the dish by the door and hung it on her new office at the research lab. The job offer had come quietly, a letter from an old colleague who'd heard about her work at the science fair. Rachel had hesitated, almost said no out of habit, but something inside her had shifted. Now, as she unlocked the door to her new office, the keychain swung on the handle, a symbol of every brave choice, every risk, every failure turned into a new beginning. She sat at her desk, sunlight pouring in, and took a moment to breathe. The world outside was noisy and uncertain, but inside Rachel felt strong. Not just lucky, not just stubborn, strong, because she'd chosen to forgive herself, to ask for help, to let new people in. Later that day, she picked up Max and Maya from school. Graham met them at the corner, holding a box of cookies, Sophie waving from her car. Rachel felt the moment expand, wide and welcoming, as if life was daring her to believe it could be this good. That night, she wrote a new letter, just a single line, and slipped it into her drawer. Family isn't just what we inherit. It's what we build, one choice at a time. And on her way to bed, she brushed her fingers over the old keychain, now more talisman than relic, a memory remade by hope. The air at the neighborhood street fair was warm and full of promise. Fried dough and kettle corn, laughter, the click and rattle of carnival games. Rachel stood at the edge of the crowd, watching Max and Maya dart between booths, their voices rising above the din as they tugged Sophie from a dunk tank to a face-painting table. Graham trailed behind, slower but smiling, his silver hair catching in the afternoon sun. In that moment, with music swirling and neighbors waving, Rachel felt something she hadn't dared to imagine for years. Real, ordinary joy. She looked down at her hand, where the copper keychain swung from Maya's wrist. Maya insisted on carrying it for good luck. The metal, worn smooth from years of clutching, glinted in the sunlight. It had survived every season of their lives, changing from a secret anchor to a shared family talisman. Rachel wandered past the booths, a cup of lemonade in one hand. She exchanged shy smiles with other parents, teachers, even a few scientists from her new lab who'd come to see the legendary twins. Her job was still new, her name barely dry on the office door, but for once, she felt like she belonged in every part of her life. Not just as a mother, not just as a survivor, but as herself. The afternoon unfolded in small, sweet vignettes. Max won a goldfish by guessing the right number of jelly beans. Sophie juggled balloons for a cheering gaggle of kids. Graham helped Maya pin a science ribbon to her jacket. Rachel caught snatches of their laughter, the unguarded kind that only comes when you're not waiting for something to go wrong. As dusk settled, Graham pulled Rachel aside near the edge of the park, where lanterns swung from the trees. He pressed something small and cool into her hand, a silver keychain, new but sturdy, engraved with 5 words. For all your brave choices. Rachel's eyes stung, but she managed to smile. You didn't have to. Graham shook his head, the gesture gentle but firm. I wanted to. It's not about making up for the past. It's about honoring the choices that brought us here. She turned the keychain over and over, feeling its weight. For a moment, the noise and color of the fair faded, replaced by all the versions of herself who'd ever doubted, ever hoped, ever dared to choose a different path. Nearby, Sophie joined them, her arm draped over Maya's shoulders. We saved you a seat by the music, she said. You're not getting out of dancing, Rachel. Rachel laughed, warmth flooding through her. As they made their way toward the music, the twins dashed up, faces painted, arms full of prizes. Maya held out the old copper keychain. Can you keep it safe, Mom? It's getting heavy. Rachel knelt to Maya's level, brushing a strand of hair from her daughter's face. It's brought us this far, but you know what? I think we're strong enough now to make our own luck. She closed Maya's hand around the new silver keychain. For all your brave choices, too. They joined the others on the dance floor, Rachel, the twins, Sophie, Graham, a makeshift family, linked by laughter and tangled histories and a handful of stubborn hope. For the first time, Rachel didn't feel the old ache of what was missing. She felt only gratitude for what she had. A family built on small decisions, courage, and second chances. As the music swelled, lanterns bobbing overhead, Rachel caught a glimpse of her reflection in the window of a food truck. She barely recognized herself. Strong, laughing, surrounded by people who had chosen her as much as she had chosen them. For so long, she'd carried the old keychain as a reminder of everything she'd survived. Now it felt more like a promise, that every day she could choose again. Later, as the fair wound down, Rachel lingered at the edge of the crowd. She watched Maya and Max chasing each other beneath the strings of lights, Graham and Sophie swapping stories with neighbors. She let herself savor the simple, dazzling truth. Family wasn't just what you inherited or what you lost. It was what you built, moment by moment, even when it hurt. Especially when it hurt. She slipped the old keychain into her bag, a keepsake, not a crutch. In her pocket, the new silver one gleamed. For all your brave choices. Rachel thought of all the women like her, standing at the edges of their own stories, wondering if they were strong enough to start again. She wished she could tell each of them, it's not about luck or being fearless. It's about making the next choice and the one after that. That's how a new story begins. As she started toward her family, Rachel heard Maya call out, waving the keychain in the air. "Hurry up, Mom! We're not done yet!" Rachel laughed, letting her heart swing wide open to the future. The story wasn't over. There was more music to dance to, more messes to make, more courage to discover. If you could choose your family, would you dare to let go of the past? And if you want more stories about courage and second chances, don't forget to follow for the next chapter.